So my name is Sandy Monteiro. I am a music industry veteran. The reason why I'm here is I was asked in 2012 to be a speaker at an INSEAD leadership module on an idea that I was working on that hadn't been completed. But the direction in which the idea was going was very promising. And that was 12 years ago. So now, I'm here to tell you the story of the completion of the idea. So, when Adil said, please come to Karachi and do this seminar with a topic of leading with vision and innovation, he said, can you do that? Yes. So what's the name of your presentation? And I said, my presentation is called The Sky is Falling. So I left the music industry in 2017. I went on to open my own consulting and investment company. I've invested in a food chain that has been awarded by the Singapore government. We are launching in Malaysia now. And I also have my own record label in Indonesia, where we've had 3 top 10 hits last year. So everybody likes this, but they love this. So my last corporate position in a company that I didn't own was Universal Music Group, right? And I had 2 job titles. The first one was the president of South and East Asia. And my second title was called the head of new business for Asia Pacific. So then the question is, what is new business? And the answer is, new business is what you do when your old business is screwing up. So if you don't know Universal Music, you probably know some of the artists who are under Universal Music. The Beatles, Queen, the Carpenters, Taylor Swift, Katy Perry, Justin Bieber, Bob Marley, Maroon 5, U2. So if you had English pop radio, 6 out of every 10 songs, or 2 out of every 3 songs that you hear is universal. And the region I looked after, South and East Asia, was the whole of ASEAN, Greater China, and Korea. So part of the discussion, and when trying to build a module of this presentation, we wanted to talk about uncertainty and upheaval and how that impacts our role as leaders. And the truth is, uncertainty and upheaval happens every day to lots of people in different countries. And a lot of the time, it's communities who are affected by this together. But what if you lived in a world where everybody else was okay except you? You were the only person dealing with the uncertainty and upheaval, where all the industries that were around you and all the industries that worked with you were fine. And they couldn't understand why you were complaining so much or why you were so depressed. Hence begins the story of the Southeast Asian music miracle. Can I get it? Click. So why is this relevant to a hall of people who have nothing to do with the music industry or little to do with the music industry? And the answer is, could the music industry be a crystal ball to tell you what is going to be happening to your industry in the next 5 years, the next 10 years? And perhaps when you see what we did or what happened to us, you can prepare yourself that you are better equipped to deal with the same kind of problems which you are going to be facing. You might think this is rubbish, but the truth is, if you look at any significant commercial technological advancement, over the last 100 years, the music industry was the one that was responsible for taking it from test model to wide consumer acceptance. Starting in the 1900s, the 1920s with wireless radio. The technology was there, and it was being used for communication between two outposts. But what made radio popular was music being played on radio. And then everybody wanted a radio because they wanted to listen to music. The same thing happened with magnetic tape. Magnetic tape had been invented in the early 40s. But it was the music industry that popularized the use of magnetic tape in the form of cassettes, right? And later on, computer companies used the same cassettes for programming. But the music industry was the one that made it used by everybody. And the reason why this is all important is because we were talking about AI and all these different things and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we're talking about it, but you want to know who's going to make it popular and being used by everybody? The music industry. Optical disc, or you might know the name CD, or VCD, or DVD. The first commercial use of optical discs for the mass public was the music CD in the 80s, right? And then the computer companies turned it into CD-ROM, and then the film companies turned it into DVD. External hard drives. External hard drives were the first things to be invented in the 60s to store data. But what made it popular? The iPod. And suddenly, everybody wanted a hard drive. Then hard drives became common practice where everybody had a thumb drive to store additional information. So what am I trying to get here? Changes come all the time. But the people that take those changes and make it available and used by the public, the music industry is at the forefront for that. So if you want to know what's going to happen to your business and how you engage with AI, watch what the music industry is doing. So, since I've already been there and it's now coming to you, what is the future? And the future is disruption. Whatever you think you do every day and that's your normal life, that's going to change. Whether you are in charge of the change or somebody else is in charge of the change, it's going to change. Now, I'll just go back on that. So, the stupid thing about fighting change, you know, when Zago and Loic were saying, you know, resistance to change, and you don't want to do this and you don't want to do that. I mean, the funny thing, so when we were the music industry, we had competitors. So for Universal Music, my biggest competitor was Sony Music. Have you heard of Sony Music? Yeah? My other competitor was Warner Brothers. Have you heard of Warner Brothers? My other competitor was EMI. Have you heard of EMI? Big companies, right? And whenever, right, we would try and do something new or sign a new artist or cut a deal, I would be looking to my left to see what Sony is doing. I'd be looking to my right to see what EMI was doing. And we would try and do strategies to block them. Our whole strategy was, what is my competitor doing? Everybody focuses on what your competitor is doing. Which one of the competitors screwed up the business? None. Somebody we had not even heard of. Somebody called Napster. Who's Napster? What's Napster? Is it a fish? Is it a chicken? We had no idea what this thing called Napster was. But this unknown object that came from space destroyed a whole industry. So when you look at yourselves and you're strategizing and, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to put this in place and put this in place because I'm watching what my competitor is doing, and when he does this, I'm going to do this and do this and this. The change that's going to be enforced on you is going to come from somebody you probably have never heard of before. And that's how it is for everybody else now. I'm too far. What happened to people watching TV? How many of you have kids above the age of 12 and under the age of 18? How many people have kids? Do they still watch TV? No. YouTube disrupted that. Telcos. I was just speaking to a lady from a telco just now. There was a time where telcos were making so much money. They were the hot business to be in, right? 10 cents for an SMS, 50 cents for a phone call. What happened? Did Telenor come up with something that made Walid upset? Did Ooredoo do something that made Vodafone upset? No. A company called WhatsApp, or Kakao Talk, or the Chinese one, WeChat, nobody in the telco industry had any dealings with these people that ended up destroying their business, right? Hotels, Airbnb, completely changed the way they operated. Taxis, completely changed, not by another taxi company, but by a company that didn't have taxis. So your taxi business was killed by a taxi business that didn't have taxis. How are you going to prepare for that? So this is the reality of the music industry. And where were we? 1999. When was TV disrupted? 6 years later. When was telcos disrupted? 2009. Hotels disrupted? 2009. Uber disrupted? 2011. That's 10 years. So my question to you is, how's your business? Are you in an industry that's safe? Everybody's cruising, everybody's thinking, yeah, I'll have the chicken body for lunch. Maybe I'll have some, dessert because I'm feeling good. Why? Because my business is good. What I'm trying to tell you is enjoy the lunch, brother, because good lunch is not every day. And it's not every day if you're not prepared for it. So, the music industry is not really a business. It's a fun thing. So it's very hard for me to talk about the music business if you don't actually understand how the music business operates. So let me give you a very, very short history of the modern music industry. So this began in the mid-50s, right, in a time that we call the Elvis era, right? This was the moment that people who were involved in making music finally found out that you could come up with black little plates of plastic and sell it for money, and you would make a lot of money from it. So this was called the Elvis period. The Elvis period was then followed by what we call the Beatles period. And the Beatles period was the time where we in the music industry found out that not only could we make money, but we could make mania. We could turn whole countries crazy. We could make mothers fight with their daughters, sons fight with their fathers over what we did as an industry. This was a very powerful time. This was a time of change in the world, and the music industry drove culture. The next period is what I called the sex, drugs, and rock and roll period, also known as money for nothing and chicks for free, which is what happens when you give young people too much money with no supervision, right? This was like the peak of the music industry. We were having fun. MDs would spend 4 days on the golf course and 1 day in the office. Why? I don't need to be there. The money's coming in anyway, right? That's why I'm asking the guys, who's having a great run of business now? Are you playing golf 4 days a week and in the office 1 day a week? Because life is easy? We were there. We were there. which is now leading to the fourth period, which I call Armageddon. This is the fourth period. And where we are today is still within this period. The way I define Armageddon to an industry is something like this. The period between 2010 and 2012. Warner Music was sold and delisted from the stock exchange. The legend of EMI, the company, the home of the Beatles, was cut in half and sold into two pieces, one to Sony and one to Universal. This is the legend label of England was cut in half and split into two. And Sony Music, sorry, I got the wrong logo here. They wisely changed the logo to show their new business model for profitability, which was a blood smear on the wall. The blood of all the executives they killed in order to stay profitable. I couldn't have designed a more apt logo for a record company. And you can look at the dates. So these are all real articles which I've shared with you. So, if you were in 2010 and you typed in Google, music industry in trouble, you would have 7.6 million articles. What have you typed? Music industry is dead. 12 million articles. Music industry is happy. 4,000 articles. Music industry not happy. 24 million articles. So let me ask you, you are senior executives in several companies in the country. If you typed in your company's name with the tagline, your company's name in trouble, how many articles do you see? Your company is dead. How many articles do you see? Right? Chances are you won't see very many, but you might. But what I'm trying to tell you is this was everything on the internet in 2010, 2012. So in 2010, they made me the president of the region, and I'll talk a bit more about that. And I found this graph on the internet, and it covered the total value of the music industry from 1973 all up to 2009, right? So I'm going to add a bit more detail because I took over in 2010, so I'm going to add a bit more numbers here. So the first thing is I want you to see the peak of the industry when people were playing golf every day. The peak of the industry was in 2000, right? So I'm going to add the 2010 numbers to make it relevant to me. Can you see where the line is on 2010? That's a 60% drop in the value of our business over 10 years. That is the quantitative measure of Armageddon. So it wasn't bad enough that the whole industry was in trouble. So I was made the president of Asia. So if this is the actual numbers from Universal, by the way. If this was a human body, I was made the president of Asia. If Universal was a human body, as somebody jokingly said to me, another president in London said to me, Sandy, oh, you're the asshole of Universal. If you were a body part, Universal in Asia was the buttocks. And the joke among all my peers. So not only were we in a very bad period as an industry, in Asia, like we were already in a hole. In Asia, we were at the bottom of the hole, and then we dug another hole at the bottom of the hole. That was how bad Asia was. So, what was it like to be an executive working in the music industry in Asia during this time? And the best way I can describe it is you're walking in a dark forest, and it's all foggy. And you can't really see very far. You can see slightly ahead of you, but you can't see much further than that. And then suddenly you hear your colleague in the next room turn on his computer. And then the next thing you know, that same colleague is taking a box and he's walking out the door. And then tomorrow, you go back to work, that room is empty, you open your computer, you hear somebody else open the computer, and then you see that colleague walking out with a box. This was the life we were leading during this Armageddon period. In general, I'm not making a joke about this, but I just wanted to. It felt like we were in a war where we couldn't see the enemy, we didn't have the weapons to fight back, and we just sat there and waited to be shot. I don't know how to explain this, right? But Zago was talking about it, about what you do and how you get into a state of mind and whatever. Having lived that moment, what I can tell you is nothing sharpens your mind more than being confronted with your own demise. And I'm talking metaphorically, the demise of my career. When your career is on the line and it can be lost at any moment without you doing anything, you can't do anything to try and save yourself, what goes through your mind? And that was the state of mind of every managing director and every employee who worked for us. Not just for us, but for all the record companies in the region. So you're saying, how did you guys get into such a bad position? How did you allow yourselves to become like this, right? Well, the 10 years before the 10 years were fantastic. Remember? We were playing golf 4 days. Remember, brother, you and I were playing golf 4 days. What happened, right? So something called piracy happened, right? How many of you have bought a pirate VCD or CD in your lives? Don't lie, I did, right? The stupid thing was, at least you paid the pirate some money to buy the CD or VCD. Piracy in the music industry got so stupid that it was free online. You didn't even have to pay anybody, you just took it, right? So when I say high levels of piracy, it's high levels of piracy with no barriers to access. So because of high piracy, our sales of CDs and cassettes completely died. It went like that within 24 months. But even though our business had died, we still had the infrastructure in place for the Boomtown Charlie period. We still had the mindset that things were great. We had all the salesmen with all their cars. We had all the senior executives with all their perks, right? All those were in place because we came from a fantastic moment in time before that. And then there were all these new ideas. Hey, this Napster thing, you know, it's a bad thing, but if we could find a way to make it a good thing, maybe we can save ourselves some money, whatever. And what you have, if you have the senior executives who were there during the good times saying, no, digital, no. CD is the best. CD forever, CD. And what they did was they actively put in place strategies and decisions to actively stop digital and try and preserve the CD business, even though you were holding a bucket with 10 holes and the water was just going out of the bucket. And yet they were keeping anybody else away who wanted to tell them, hey, boss, the bucket's got holes in it. This business is dying. And the boss goes, I know what I'm doing. I've been here 20 years. I will do this. You just stay away. Right? And the problem is, yeah, there were new ideas coming on what we could do else in the music business other than CDs. But the senior executives were so entrenched in DVD and CD and all these physical formats that when somebody came with them with a new idea, they would be like, no, I'm not sure. Oh, who are you? Oh, you're Loic's son. Oh, how's your father? Loic's son. Okay, since you're Loic's son, I will give you the license to do the business. So I didn't, as a senior executive, I didn't bother to learn or understand what this new business opportunity was. I just gave it to somebody I knew or somebody whose son. Because, yeah, I know him. He's my friend. Oh, we've been doing business for 20 years. It'll be fine. Not knowing that the son had no idea how to do the business, so I just gave the only license for a new business to somebody who didn't know how to do it. So because of all these stupid decisions and stubbornness and all these different things, right? So we did a deal with a telco, right? Sorry to upset all the telcos, right? For a ringtone, where the telco said, oh, I'm putting this platform, I can sell ringtones for you, so I will give you 10%. And 10% is worth $100,000 to you. So for a dying man, when you say $100,000 to you, it's like water. You go, okay, I'll take the 10%. Not knowing the telco's taken the 90%, right? It's this lack of understanding of what the new models were going to be and just accepting things because it was a short-term answer to a problem. So these were all the reasons why the industry was dying faster than it should have. So between 2005 and 2008, in the 9 countries in the Southeast Asian region, 7 out of the 9 MDs were fired. That left 2 MDs. The MD of Taiwan, who was made the chairman of Greater China, and the MD of Malaysia, myself, was made the president of Asia. In any other industry, at any other time, if somebody was a VP of something, to be told, Sandy, you are VP of operations. You are going to be promoted to the CEO of the region. Everybody clap. Sunny and I sat in the room after they had fired the other 7 MDs, and we looked at each other. Was this a gift, or was it a punishment? Were they keeping us for the end to make a more painful death? Is this a joke, or is this something good? Ask yourself. The story just there, or like, oh my God. Yeah, that was the response. So, when I was made president, I had to make my first speech to the new MDs we'd hired. And I looked at this graph, and I thought to myself, I have 9 new executives running 9 countries. This is my graph. What the heck am I going to tell them that is going to make anything better. And I sat on this graph for a long time. I'm going to add some detail for 2010. Okay? I looked at it, and I looked at it, and I looked at it, and then something struck me. You know, mathematics, when you have a bell curve, right? You draw a bell curve, and you draw a straight line through a bell curve. What happens? Do you know? You get a bell curve, you draw a straight line, the line will touch the curve at 2 points. Here? And here. 2 points. What is the x-axis? The x-axis is years, it's time. So it said to me, hey, you know this number where we are at? This is not the first time the industry has been at this number. We were at exactly this place in 1989. So where we were in 2010 is exactly where the industry was in 1989. Let's go back to the mindset of the executives who were there in 1989. What were they going through? Holy cow, they were at the beginning of an incredible growth of their business. And yet, here we were in 2010 talking about doom, gloom, death, destruction. What made it worse was not only were we at the exact same number in 1989, the industry was changing at exactly the same rate in 1989. What do I mean by that? In 1989, they had an old format called cassette that was 70% of the business and going down. But they had a new format called CD, and it was 30% and it was going up, right? But you added the two numbers together, it was a positive growth. But here we were in 2010 at exactly the same change of business, and we were calling people to prepare for a funeral. So I thought I'd be, Loic, what was the word you used? Crazy? I thought I'd be crazy, as Loic says. The technical word is crazy. And at the first keynote that I gave to my executives in Hong Kong, I said to them, guys, what if we rewrote the story? What if I scratched this out and I wrote 2010 here? What's ahead of us? Hey, maybe in crazy land, if we were so positive and so determined and so passionate about the business, we could turn this into the new growth bubble for Universal and the music industry. Why did I say this? This is a picture of girls at a Beatles concert in 1961. This is a picture I took outside the Mayfair Hotel in London in 2011 of girls waiting for a boy called Justin Bieber. We were the executives in the hotel having a meeting to meet Justin Bieber for the first time. We had no freaking idea who Justin Bieber was. But outside the hotel, there were already girls screaming and waiting for this Justin Bieber guy. What's the difference? What's the difference? There is no difference. The demand for music is still as high as ever. The fans are still as crazy as ever. Our problem was we lost the last connection that allowed us to make money from this. That's why we were dying. It's not that our industry was not popular or not favored or not wanted or whatever. We were wanted more than ever. We just lost the last 10 feet of the connection, and that is why our business was in the toilet. So, as any good senior executive, I called my team together and we put down a plan of action. I'm not going to go into all the details, but so I'd like to claim credit for being the genius that sat in the presidential office with a white sheet of paper, and I wrote these 10 points down on what we're going to do to transform the company. But if I told you that, I would be lying. I didn't do this. But what I did do is I called all my key executives, and I said, how can we fix this? What are the things that are broken? That last 10 feet of wire, why is it broken? How do we reconnect this 10 feet that we can make money again? And these are the ideas that these guys came up with, and I just wrote it down, and now it's mine. So the first thing is we decided to take a leadership position. Remember the sign, "Don't follow me, I'm lost too"? Sony and Warner had no freaking idea what they were doing. So if we were looking at them and trying to follow them and see where they were going, we were just going to end up in another hole. So we took a decision, screw everybody, we will decide where we want to go. And we will put in place changes and lobby governments to get things that we wanted in a way that will help us, regardless of what Sony and Warner did. The big difference between the regional office, the regional office was in Hong Kong. There were 30 executives. They were all VP of legal, VP of marketing, VP of finance, right? All these guys had direct reports in all the other countries. In all record companies, Sony, Warner, Universal, in the early days, the role of the VPs was to call all their downline. So, okay, Mustafa, how is the marketing program in Singapore? Give me your report. Thank you very much. Hello, Dr. Muhammad? How's the marketing situation in Indonesia? Please give me a report, right? Hello, Professor Said? How's the marketing situation in Philippines? Give me a report. And then the VP of marketing would collate all the reports, and then, boss, this is the report, right? And the same thing would happen for finance. The same thing would happen for legal. So all these senior, very highly paid executives, all they were doing was calling people up and getting a report. And then when Dr. Muhammad was late in the report, Muhammad, where's my report? You know it has to be by 5 o'clock because I have to give it to by 7. There was no purpose other than to put pressure on the downline to report to you. And why was the report needed by 5 p.m.? Because in Hong Kong, we needed to collate that report to send it to our upline in London. Because if we didn't do it, then the VP in London would go, Mustafa, where's the freaking report for Asia? Asia report is late, everybody else is in, what's wrong with it? That was how all these organizations were running. You had very, very capable, People who've had 5, 10, 15 years experience in the industry, knowledge of the markets, whose job was only there to call for reports. So my first statement to my team was that I don't want to see any VPs in the office when I come to Hong Kong. I want you to go to the countries and see what you can do to help. So my VP of marketing would go to countries like Indonesia, Philippines. How's your plan for Justin Bieber? How's your plan for Taylor Swift? Oh, you know, we like to do this, but it's a bit expensive and we can't afford TV. How much you need for TV? Hong Kong will send money to Indonesia to help them do a TV campaign for U2, because Indonesia was the biggest market for U2 for us, right? So rather than just shouting at them, I sent my guy down to the market, mix up with the guys on there on a support basis, not on a report basis. And we did this every time. So much so, right? If you look at 10 years prior to this, when the president of a region would come to a country, everybody's like this, right? Ah, boss, yes, boss. That was the reaction when the president of a region went to a country for a market visit, because it would happen so rarely that it was like some circus. It got to a stage where the country MDs and the marketing directors and the finance directors were seeing my guys so often, but they were seeing them because my guys were coming in to help them with problems. If they weren't going to hit their budget for the month because they were short by $1 million, I will say, we've got $1 million in the regional fund, send it to Malaysia, help Malaysia hit the budget, right? We'll collect it back from them when they do better, right? So whenever they saw us, they knew we were there to help them, right? And as a result, all my MDs no longer respected me because they called me bro. I don't know, right? Restructuring, you all know. Conversion of illegal services, a whole bunch of pirate services, remember? So I could do two things. I could spend money on lawyers and try and put these guys in jail, or I can have a chat and say, General, you're running a site that's letting people download illegally. Let's try and fix your business model that you don't do it illegally, and if you get paid, I want a cut. If we deal, I won't put you in jail. And you know what? The two biggest pirates in Asia said, can we cut a deal? The pirate in Korea became our second biggest trading partner, and the pirate in Taiwan became our third biggest trading partner. Volume bundling deals. This is where we stopped trying to sell to the consumer, but instead we found brands who were trying to reach out to young people, and we would bundle music with laptops or with phones or all these things. So we would sell like $1 million worth of business to a brand rather than to a consumer, right? Remember the deal I gave to my friend's Loic's son, right, who didn't know what he was doing? We took the deal back. Remember the telco who took 90% and we took 10? We said, guys, it's a 2-year contract, it's 2 years now. It's time to renegotiate. You've made your money, so let's be fair. 50-50. True story. I said 50-50 to a telco, right? Guess what the telco told me? Anybody? Guess what the telco told me? He said, we'll go from 90-10 to you to 50-50 to us. What do you say? I hope I don't offend anybody, but the telcos all told me, right? And I go, thank you. The license ends in 3 days. Shut down the platform in 3 days. If not, I'm suing you. So the telcos shut down all the platforms. I get a call from the CEO of a very big telco, which if I told you, you would know the name of this guy. He called me and says, Sandy, you are the chairman of the recording industry of Malaysia. You have just cost the recording industry of Malaysia 90 million ringgit. Do you understand that you're destroying the business? And I said, sir, do you realize that you are losing 600 million ringgit? So if you're happy to go half with me, I'm quite happy for you to have half the business. And after 6 months, all the telcos called me back and said, 50-50. Within 3 months, we made up the money we lost for the 6 months. Invest in domestic. My thing is falling down, I don't know why. Invest in domestic. So when a company does really badly, and you have uplines in London and in New York and whatever, and you say, I know we're doing really badly, but I found this really talented artist in Indonesia or in Malaysia or whatever. We would like to sign her because we think that she could be a very big star, but it'll cost us about 400,000 US dollars to take her from a nobody to famous. So can we don't have the money because we're running at a loss. Can you, London, give us permission and some money to sign this girl? And because the region had done so badly for 10 years, the command was, thou shalt not invest in any domestic music. Just sell Justin Bieber and Taylor Swift because that's already been paid for in America, and you get the product for free, and then whatever you sell, you make a profit. But if you sign a local artist, you have to build that artist up from the ground up. That costs, you may not make the money back. It's a risk. You are not allowed. Imagine this. Markets like Indonesia, the domestic market is 70%. Markets like Thailand, the domestic music is 90%. Markets like the Philippines, the domestic music is 50%. So when you tie my hands behind my back and say, don't invest in domestic, you are basically telling me that I can only play in 20% of the market. So what did I do? I disobeyed my boss. So I secretly found a way to license music from production houses where it wasn't me investing, but I would give a good share to the production house and they would sign the artists for me. And then I would just do a deal with the production house where we will help represent you, but we didn't sign the artist directly. And I did it 2 or 3 times, and all the investments were successful. And then I would go to my boss and say, hey, there's this already successful artist that I would now like to bring into my label, and we don't have to pay very much, right? But we can represent her. And because the risk was so low, my bosses all went, yeah, go ahead, good job, right? Not knowing that we had already secretly paid for all the development because we really believed in the artist. But what head office had done was for 10 years, they took away our ability to invest in domestic music, right? Now, SMPs is actually a very special animal, and it's something that saved us. SMP, strategic marketing partnerships. I'll give you an example a bit later on. But the idea is, how can we use all the power of Universal to make somebody in another industry be much better than their competitors, right? Without actually giving them any music. But the way I make them better is I make sure that we don't do any music relationship activities with their competitors, but we put all our power to use our music assets to make that brand the king. Simple idea, a bit more difficult in execution, but we were so successful that we signed deals with Digi, Indosat, True, Smart, Axiata, Cambodia, right? True in Thailand. Each one of those deals, right, took us from making $300,000 a year in digital music, which is very new, but each one of those deals took us from 300,000 to 2.5 million in a year. just by working with one partner and completely ignoring the rest. We lobbied governments to change laws to help us, and we opened new markets. So open new markets has two meanings. The first one was we actually opened geographic markets. We opened Vietnam and Cambodia, but we also did things that we'd never done before. We started an online presence on YouTube. We started merchandising with T-shirts and caps and a whole bunch of different things. And we started to invest in TV assets for talent shows to find the next big star, right? But at the bottom of all of this, and the key point, was every one of our executives was encouraged to innovate. The presidential office was not the monopoly of good ideas. The regional office was not the monopoly of good ideas. The MD of a country was not the monopoly of good ideas. We were open to any good idea, from the lowest guy to the highest guy. You're out in the market, tell us what's missing, what we're doing wrong, what can we do extra? Listen to what's going on the ground, go and see what's going on the ground, and when you have the knowledge, innovate, create some new idea that transforms your business. So, I was very relieved 5 months after I made the crazy statement of, hey, what if we started this thing and wrote the number and we started all over again, and everybody thought I was crazy. 5 months after I said that at the G8 summit in Paris, Sean Parker, the guy that created Napster, the platform that killed the music industry, at the G8 forum, he said this. Do you want me to read it, or you can read it yourselves? You read it yourselves, right? But basically, he's saying, if we did something different, or we were clever, the music industry could be bigger than ever before. So the crazy idea I spoke about, somebody else just said the same thing. So something else happened during this time. We had had our first 3 years of Apple iTunes, right? And what came with working with Apple iTunes was data. So in the old days, when I sold a cassette, I had no idea who bought the cassette. When I sold a CD, I had no idea who bought the CD. But with Apple, Apple had all the data. And because we were the owners of the music, they had to share the data with us. So suddenly, Universal knew who our customers were. We knew how they behaved. And we knew what they liked. We knew what their tolerances were. So this is what Mustafa was talking about, looking at data and making decisions based on data. It really happens. So with the newfound confidence, it really made us question ourselves on whether the business model that we had existing for the last 50 years is actually correct. So for the past 50 years, we worked a particular way. All CDs are sold at one price. All cassettes are sold at one price. All iTunes is sold at one price, right? And that was the price. And for access to the whole market, which means if the market was 100%, only 20% of the whole market actually paid for music. So because we were inflexible with our modeling, we were only selling to 20% of the people. But with data, we raised queries to management. How about we do a subscription model, like Decathlon is changing their business to? What if we do a streaming model? What if we do bundling? What if we do hybrid? If we did it, we would create new business models, and the area under the graph was 4 times bigger than the area of the single concept model. And as a result, in the period of 3 years, we signed more ideas and more new models for business than we had done for the previous 15 years, including the launch of Spotify. So something else was happening during this time. While we were trying to sell music and we had all these crazy girls outside hotels screaming for artists and whatever, what we were noticing out in the market is that brands were going after younger and younger and younger target customers with the thought that you get them early, you have them for life, right? So they were targeting really, really, really young people and teenagers and stuff. These were the people that they were targeting. But those people were coming to us. So if you looked at Facebook, right, and this is universal, 50% of the most active accounts on Facebook during that time were universal artists. 70% of those on Twitter, sorry, that's wrong. So 50% on Twitter and 70% on Facebook were looking at universal artists more than anything else on search on these platforms. On YouTube, we had 70% of the top 10, 7 of the top 10 biggest hits on YouTube were universal music. Top 40 of Instagram were coming to Universal. So the people that all these brands were trying to get to, they were coming to us. Our problem was we couldn't monetize, right? So brands want to get to young people. They got lots of money. We have lots of young people, but we're missing the last 10 feet of cable and we can't monetize. What if we made brands the last 10 feet? Then the wires reconnect and maybe we can make money. The other problem that brands had was they were still doing things the same old way. Still do the same corporate video, still do the same boring advertising project. YouTube killed the whole concept of advertising when they introduced the skip ad button. You made a fantastic 1 minute like the whole view of the Himalayas with a helicopter, and then you spend like $2 million on the ad, and then after 5 seconds, the person goes skip. So all that money on the ad, no value, right? And the other part was a lot of brands had gotten so lazy and so presumptive of who their customers were that they were targeting the teenagers and the kids with stuff that was really, really not cool, right? So you've got brands who no longer have an easy access to young people, and they were not cool. So here's Universal with a crazy idea. We went to the brands and said, hey, we can make you cool, we can bring you young people, but you have to be our last 10 feet of cable and give us money. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. Yes, practice. The biggest battlefield for telcos during this time was the price of SMS, the price of phone call, and how cheap you could get a phone from the telco. So you sign a 2-year contract with the telco, you pay $10 a month and you get a new iPhone, right? And then you stick with the telco for 2 years because you have to pay off the phone because they gave you the option to get the phone for cheap, right? And in almost every country, the biggest battle for eyes and minds was the Sunday newspaper, right? If you were in Singapore and you opened the Sunday newspaper, there would be 16 ads from telcos. And there are only 3 telcos in Singapore, so which means each telco was putting 2 or 3 ads in the same newspaper. And you would open it, Singtel, M1, StarHub, M1, Singtel, StarHub, right? It's like, that was the game. You had to get in front of people. So we went to Singtel You remember the SMP, Strategic Marketing Partnership? Actually, I won't say we went to Singapore first. We went to another telco, which I thought we were friendly. And I said, hey, Mustafa, how you, bro, right? Hey, I have this crazy idea, right? You know, every time a concert comes to Singapore, right, the promoter will come to you and say, would you like to sponsor, $200,000? And then I'll put your logo on the poster, and I'll give you 100 tickets. And the 100 tickets you can either give to your management or you can give to some lucky draw winners or whatever, right? So I've noticed that you do that a lot. A lot of concerts were coming, and you were doing it a lot. And I calculated that you actually spent $2.5 million last year putting your logo on these concert posters just to get 100 tickets that you gave to your bosses. Why didn't you give me $2 million? And if you give me $2 million, I will make your telco so cool that all the young people will only come to you. And this telco goes, no thanks, bro. And he was my bro. So we went shopping around to the other telcos like, hey, General, bro, I put this idea. You put a telco, you sponsor this concert like this, how about you give me $2 million, and I will give you a program. Sandy, it's time for tea. I'll talk to you later. And I went around with this crazy idea, and then one day, telco thing. So it was a hot industry. So everybody in the telco was looking to the next promotion. So if you are the director of marketing, you are looking to see who's going to be the senior director of marketing. So what can I do to become the senior director of marketing? If you're the senior director of marketing, you're looking to be, how can I be the VP of marketing? If you're the VP of marketing, you're looking to be, hey, how can I be the SVP of marketing, right? And the thing is, you're not the only director. You're not the only senior director. You're not the only VP. There are about 5 other guys who have the same title as you. And everybody is like, right? Who wants to step forward? They're eyeing the other 4 or 5 guys to see what their reaction is, right? So nobody would say yes. They all go, Sandy, what a great idea. So it's agreed. We'll think about it. Okay, right? So nobody wanted to make a decision because they're worried if it was the wrong decision, they've just blown their opportunity to be promoted, right? So what happened? What happened with Singtel? So we happened to be having a meeting with the 5 VPs of marketing, and everybody's like, yeah, we like this. And by accident, the CMO of Singtel just happens to walk into the meeting room and goes, oh, sorry, what are you guys talking about here? Sandy, Universal Music. Oh, that sounds interesting. And the boss sat down, and he goes, this is fantastic, let's do it. So we had been pitching to the SVPs for 4 months with no movement, and it took a stroke of luck for the CMO to walk in to have it approved within 48 hours. What happened? We used all our assets to make Singtel look cool. So if this was a newspaper, there's no music, so Lady Gaga was going to be coming. All the phones from Singtel had Lady Gaga images, right? We were going to bring her for Formula One. And the same newspaper for the biggest competitor had teddy bear, rhinoceros, balloons. So if you're a young person looking at these 2 ads side by side, which is cool, which is not cool? The price of the phones is the same. We use our assets to make Singtel look cool. What happened? Within 24 months, Singtel had a 78% market share of the youth market in Singapore. So it worked. The other thing that we did was we would notice that, the SVPs, so there were a couple of really good guys, And we knew they weren't going to get promoted in Singtel, but they were most likely going to go and join Telkomsel in Indonesia. So then we started to look after them to make sure they looked good. And what do you know? End of the year, Loic, the new CMO for Telkomsel Indonesia. And what happens when Loic goes to Indonesia? Sandy, it's Loic. You know that project you did in Singapore? I'm the new CMO of Indonesia. I'd like to do it in Indonesia. So a deal that made $2 million for us in Singapore, out of luck, because we delivered more than the customer expected, and we encouraged the growth of the executives, as those executives went around the region, we signed new deals everywhere the new executives went. So remember that sign that had all the different logos of all the different telcos? That's what happened. And why did it happen? Because we gave all our power to the one telco that said, I love it. And the two other telcos who had the first choice said no, called us back after 8 months. Sandy, hey, that deal, can we do the deal? We want to do the deal. I said, bro, it's an SMP, strategic marketing partnership. We only do it with one partner in every country, all right? This is the face of the fans who came for the Lady Gaga show. This is Lady Gaga before she was famous. The boy is now 18. He's still in therapy because he won't take off the shirt. And you know my crazy plan? After 4 years, that crazy idea of being on that new curve of the amazing new, rah, yeah, we actually did it, right? So all we need to do was keep it up for another 6 years, and we will be where we expected to be in 10 years. But unfortunately, 2015 happened. Ah. Unfortunately, 2015 happened, and we hit our 10-year target in 5 years. At the point in time where the music industry was dying, Universal Music in Asia made the highest profits in history. We made more money than even the peak of 2000. So, now that we are record holders and record makers, and we know how to do this game, what was it like to be in the music industry? It was still a forest, still full of fog. We had no idea where the business was going to go. The difference is every member of my team walked in this forest without fear. They were confident, they knew what they were going to do, and they knew how they were going to succeed. So this is the one that everybody asked me for. He said, Sandy, can you give us a 10-step roadmap on how to do it? So all of you, please take a photo of this, because this is the roadmap. Can you read it? No, doesn't matter. Because there is no roadmap. I did not sit in 2008 and write a plan for the next 20 years. I can't tell you what to do with your industries or your businesses because your circumstances and challenges are different. Your opportunity and your threats are different. You might be the scion of a company that has been making the same brand of tea for 100 years. Do you want to change a legacy brand into Red Bull tea and go into a completely different direction? Or do you want to preserve the family's name and legacy? What kind of manpower do you have? What kind of resources do you have? What kind of mindset do you have? What kind of strength do you have to make change happen? How much inertia is there because you've invested so much in legacy platforms and hardware? Or how flexible are you that you can change on the fly? I cannot give you a roadmap, but I can tell you, you should be doing one for yourselves. And that's why, write your own words here, okay? But I will give you some of my learnings. So the first one is a monkey can lead a company when times are good. An MD can be away from the office 5 days a week playing golf and still hit his targets. But it's in bad times that you see the value of good leadership in a company. Which leads to the next part. If your company is doing badly, do you think your staff don't know you're doing badly? They know. When things are not going well, they know. They get feedback from the ground. So you as leadership can't panic. If you panic and you make panic decisions, the whole company knows it. Whether you tell them or not, they know it. Local knowledge is key, especially for senior executives. It's really easy to sit in an air-conditioned office, right, and call for reports, but you won't know what's really happening with your company on the ground if you don't go out there. Go with a salesman. Go and have lunch with him. Find out what's happening on the ground, and then you will have knowledge of what is happening in your company that you won't need a report. You won't need a weekly call. You will already know before people tell you. This one. Everybody wants to find a solution where you just copy, paste, or cookie cutter and apply. I can tell you this. This doesn't work, right? You can get a framework that guides you on how to put something in place, but there has to be customization to take into consideration what happens in every district or company or region. You must be able to customize a program. This is the key one. So when I was a senior executive, digital was the key word. Your word today is AI. So Loic and I and a few other executives were talking the last couple of days. You know, if you feel that AI can make your business better, it can. But if the thing is, okay, I'm doing a deal with Mustafa. So Mustafa, you've got an AI system, I've got an AI system. I buy from you, you sell to me, I pay you, whatever. Let's just, streamline it and get our AIs to talk to each other. So what happens is you have standard business going on between us because the two AI platforms are dealing it, and you know what? You're happy because you didn't have to hire extra staff and whatever. But let me tell you this. AI will never give you exponential growth. It will give you smooth business, but the growth will come from me having a chat with Mustafa. Hey, Mustafa, we've been doing this deal for 5 years now. What can we do that takes this from 50 to 500? What ideas do you have? Brother, talk to me. What can we do? That human interaction between two executives who are working for the benefit of each other is the catalyst for exponential growth. AI will give you the 10. And in 5 years, it will give you the 10 for cheaper. And in 20 years, it'll give you the 10 for even cheaper. But for 20 years, you will have 10. But that communication and respect and relationship and the desire to grow business together will take the business from 10 to 500. That's my perception of what AI means to me. So you can insert any buzzword here, But the minute you let that buzzword drive your business, then everything just becomes a process. And if you think your business is a process, then you don't understand the value of leadership. My success came from me leading a team of excellent people. The funny thing is, and Professor and I were talking about this yesterday, how long does it take to get excellent people? The same guys who were the excellent people 5 years before were the terrible people. We didn't change any of the lower guys. But those guys, after 5 years, delivered record profits. Yeah. Okay? So your success is not what you do. Your success will come from the success of your team. But I can guarantee you this, if your team fails, it will be because of you. And this is related to it. You know, everybody wants to be the hero. You know, they always say, a winner has 100 fathers, but a loser is a bastard, right? If you don't recognize the young people in your organization and you cultivate them and you give them credit for success and you motivate them and you give them a path for progression where they feel they are of value in your company, I will tell you, in 5 years, they won't be in your company. And this is the other thing that is linked to that. All bosses want their staff to be loyal to them. My question to the bosses is, how loyal are you to your staff? Which means if you had to report to London, and London says, Sandy, you know that guy in Malaysia? What an ass. He screwed this up, whatever. I get rid of him. Okay, boss. Loic, you're dead. Or you find out what happened, and if Loic did the right job but was unlucky, do you protect him? Or you just follow what your boss says and do it blindly and kill him? So if you want loyalty from the people below you, give loyalty back to them. A lot of leaders like to hire consultants to give them solutions to problems. And they want like a 5-step process to solve the problem. So to me, you have to take a strategic view of why you have the problem in the first place. If you can understand why the problem exists, and you find a way to fix the problem from all the way from where it starts, then the problem is fixed. But if you want a problem that covers the top 2 layers, that problem still exists 5 layers down. Be entrepreneurial, right? So when we looked at Loic's graph, I'm the blue circle, right? Because I feel entrepreneurs are what drive exponential growth in companies. And last of all, innovate. We had a bit of a debate at PSTD yesterday about what exactly innovation means. Somebody says, oh, when you go to a button phone to a screen phone like an Apple, that's innovation, right? If you go from analog to digital, that's an innovation. My personal perception of innovation is if what you do keeps your brand front and center as first choice to your customer, when your customer feels, I like this brand because they keep doing stuff that keeps me interested, that is innovation. I'm done. Thank you. Sorry for keeping you late.